Hey folks, this is Ardwulf. Welcome. We have here an unboxing video of Tunisia II, which I do not believe I have seen on YouTube up to this point. This just arrived from NWS. The game is from Multiman Publishing and The Gamers. It's part of the Operational Combat series. And as part of my sort of plan to get into the West Front stuff, I picked this one up. This is a relatively accessible, in terms of scale, OCS game. It's, I think, 2 maps and 3 counter sheets, which for an OCS game is small. It's not the smallest OCS game, but it also does not have an enormous amount of special game-specific rules either, so it's considered a pretty good and easily accessible introduction to the OCS system. So, let's open her up. On the back of the box here, we got complexity medium, solitaire suitability medium. Can't really argue with that. This is not a tiny game. I'm just trying to do this without damaging anything. This is not a tiny game. So let's have a look. As you can see, it's in one of these sort of looks like 1.5-inch MMP boxes, which I'm not a particular fan of the scale of this particular size of this box. All right, so Tunisia II. Here is our list of stuff. 1 box. 2 maps, 3 counter sheets, an OCS book, charts and tables, Tunisia II rulebook, varied charts, and 2 dice. Okay, so here we have the Tunisia II game-specific rules. These are printed on pretty standard gamers type stock. It's pretty heavy matte stock. 24 pages of this. So this is going to have the scenarios in it. Let's take a look at that. It's got what I figure is 6.5 pages or so of game-specific actual rules. And then we get into scenarios. We have Race for Tunis, which is a 1-mapper. Tunisia Campaign, which is going to be both maps. Battle for Kasserine, which is... looks like it uses both maps, but only part of both maps. The Kasserine Campaign, which uses both maps. Now, one of the things I like about how the gamers do war games is there is almost always, in every example I've ever had, a really ample selection of scenarios. East half of map B, so that's pretty small. Map A, the end in Africa. Is there more? Not yet. We have here some, what looks like errata counters for Beyond the Rhine, which I also have, by the way. So that, I guess I should mention, I got Beyond the Rhine like a week and a half ago, because it's also OCS West Front. And I found that I had received 2 copies of Counter Sheet 3 and 0 copies of Counter Sheet 2. So I had to get out of the phone with Multiman, who then sent me a replacement counter sheet. Which they did expeditiously. I have no complaints about that. These kind of mix-ups happen. They fixed it. I'm happy. But it did mean I had to wait a week or so to start clipping it. So this is the OCS 4.2 charts and tables. This is on a sort of, I'm not sure I would call that card stock. It's more like heavy paper. And in fact, it really feels like exactly the same paper that the rulebook is printed on. So pretty heavy for paper, but very, very light for cardstock. We have Tunisia II, looks like counter sheet 1. Just guessing here. Looks like we have the Germans in this sort of tan. These are probably the Italians, if Sicily II is anything to go by. These are probably some French. Here we have the series rules. And, you know, I kind of like the stock that Multiman uses for their counters. It's sort of white core stock, but it's heavier white core stock than GMT's white core stock. The counters feel nice and thick and hefty. That said, I have seen on occasion the counters split in the middle across their layers, and then they have to be repaired, which I don't really like. But that aside, we have here the 56-page, same paper stock, OCS rulebook. This stuff, the rules material for this game and every other OCS game, is on gamersarchive.net, so you can go download these and check them out. So in terms of how complicated OCS is, I mean, it's got a 56-page rulebook, so you think, wow, that's pretty complicated. It's not as complicated as that would imply. For one thing, there's only like 44 pages of actual rules. A couple pages of those are optional rules. And the rules that are here are pretty verbosely explained. the complexity of OCS does not arise from the bulk of rules. It's not that heavy of a game. The complexity of OCS arises in understanding how all those rules interact with one another. All right, so here pretty obviously we have British Americans and Free French. What I take to be Free French anyway. They could be Vichy French. What about these guys? Looks like the same blue to me. They're probably Vichy French, actually. So we have a map, which I'm not going to unfold, but it's going to be the standard size map that pretty much everybody does. We have a, more or less, we have an Axis Arrivals card, which is nice. File that aside. We have another 4.2 charts and tables cheat sheet. I'm probably going to print those out myself on something pretty heavy. Tunisia II Allied Arrivals. And again, that's a double-sided sort of. Now this I would call light cardstock. It's interesting that it's different stock than what they print the player on. Okay, here's the second map. Of course, these de-nesting maps have a very distinctive style that I rather like. It is not that pretty necessarily, but it is super, super functional. And here is an OCS 4.2 markers sheet. These, of course, will go into the big box of OCS markers that I already am generating from the sizable number in Beyond the Rhine. So that is Tunisia II. Looking forward to getting OCS something on the table. That might end up being Sicily II. I don't own Reluctant Enemies, chiefly because I'm not terribly interested in that particular end of the conflict. But I do have Sicily II, so likely that my next assault on the OCS system was probably going to be with Sicily II, because it is a one-map game. But it might be this instead. Get this thing punched and clipped and available for deployment onto a table, and I will see you soon.